And welcome back to CBS News 24/7. We've been covering breaking news. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi holding a news conference just moments ago saying that Abrego Garcia is on his way back to the United States to face criminal charges. His return comes more than 2 months after the Trump administration mistakenly deported him to El Salvador. We're learning a long slew of charges he faces. Let's go to some sound from Pam Bondi just moments ago.
That we've seen video of from Tennessee, where Abrego Garcia was first identified by the local authorities. At the time, the Homeland Security Department declined to take custody of him. What has happened in between that time and in between the time that the government has been arguing that he was not returnable from El Salvador? What has happened since in this investigation that brought you here?
Yes, the question was in 2021, there was the traffic stop. And what has changed since then? What has changed is Donald Trump is now president of the United States and our borders are again secure. And thanks to the bright light that has been shined on Abrego Garcia, this investigation continued with actually amazing police work. And we were able to track this case and stop this international smuggling ring from continuing.
Recently found facts, right?
Yes, okay. Recently found facts.
To that point, can you just explain when this investigation was opened? The investigation in Tennessee, can you say when that investigation was opened?
Well, the grand jury indicted on May 21st. This investigation has been ongoing.
This case has been hotly debated here in Washington. In your mind, does this resolve that issue in terms of his deportation? And should this be seen in any way as complying with the judge's order to return him to the U.S. and the Supreme Court ruling that the U.S. government should facilitate his return?
There's a big difference between what the state of play was before the indictment and after the indictment. And so the reason why he is back and was returned was because there's an arrest warrant, which was presented to the government in El Salvador. So there's a big difference there. As far as whether it makes the ongoing litigation in Maryland moot, I would think so, but we don't know that. This, he just landed today.
Jake, CBS.
I just want to confirm what you said earlier, that you're intending to prosecute him and keep him in an American prison if he's found guilty, and then would remove him after his sentence is over.
Correct. Yes, he will be prosecuted in our country, sentenced in our country if convicted, and then returned after completion of his sentence.
Last one, Sadie, Wall Street Journal.
Okay. I had two. One's on topic, one's off topic. Maybe I misunderstood you, but you were mentioning, that he had some involvement in a murder, or was connected to groups that had, involved with this other smuggling ring. But to be clear, the only charges he's facing right now are the, human smuggling charges. Just that's the one offense. But the other things that you have talked about are not actually in the indictment?
No, co-conspirators allege that. And we were clear to say that he is charged with, it's not only very serious charges of alien smuggling. And again, there were children involved in that. Human trafficking, not only in our country, but in our world, is very, very real. It's very dangerous. And as you saw recently in Virginia, the arrest we made of the MS-13 member, unrelated to this, we learned at that press conference that's where they bring young children into our country and they start grooming them at middle school age to become MS-13 full-fledged members, commit violent crimes throughout our country. It is highly organized. It is very dangerous. And they are living throughout our country, but no more, because they are being arrested, they are being prosecuted, and being convicted and deported when appropriate. That's all for today.
All right, those comments coming from Attorney General Pam Bondi. I want to go to CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen. He joins us by phone because he was inside that news conference. Thanks for the hustle, Jake. Why don't you tell us your big takeaways from being inside that room, even asking questions during that news conference?
No problem. And really what we saw here is potentially the Department of Justice and the Trump administration's move in court in a separate way than that civil suit that was going on to try to order his return, brought by his wife and people close to him and legal groups fighting for his return. The Department of Justice has said all along and said in court that any way that he would be brought back to the United States would essentially to be charged with something or then redeported to another country, because the only country he could not be deported to was where he was sent in El Salvador. I think, another thing that we saw was alleging that he's part of some broad MS-13 scheme. Obviously, that evidence had never been presented in the civil suit or public before today, which is why it's such breaking news that they allege he's part of potentially an alleged 100-plus human trafficking trips. Pam Bondi alluded to potentially thousands of people being moved around the country, guns being moved, young children. Certainly a remarkable development in this case. We need to see whether he gets convicted, but that's kind of where things stand at the moment in terms of the charges that are brought. They also alleged, without evidence, that, without concrete evidence, that he potentially was involved in a murder and in soliciting naked pictures from a minor. That was not charged today. Attorney General Bondi, you saw in that last question, just said that co-conspirators mentioned it. That's certainly something to put in the public discourse, but until we see charges on that, those are just allegations right now that are not backed up by legal charges.
Sure, and Jake, I'm holding the indictment in my hand right now, reading through it, and some of what Pam Bondi was saying actually wasn't in this indictment. Are you able to tell us more about what you heard from her announcement? Some of the things that stood out was that he was part of an alien smuggling ring involving children, women, MS-13 members. Very stern remarks from the Attorney General. What else did you hear that is not written in this indictment?
Well, like I just said, I think they allege that he was part of a potential murder plot of a rival gang member's mother, that he had solicited naked pictures from a minor. Those are two significant developments for anyone. Those are not charged here. But in addition to that, really what we've seen from the Trump administration generally, if you take a step back and think about these high-profile arrests that they've launched and done press conferences about, a lot of the charges and allegations have either been overcharged and they've kind of put more things into the public sphere, like you just mentioned, that haven't actually been charged, or they've dropped the charges and moved to deport the person. Obviously, I asked Pam Bondi if that was going to be the case in this situation because, again, that would kind of prove the Department of Justice's point all along. She says that that's not the case. They intend to hold him in an American prison. But certainly putting more allegations out there without evidence really continues the PR war, I guess you could say, the public perception change that the Trump administration has wanted to do all along since really the public kind of moved to this man's side after his case was first launched and a judge ordered his return.
Do we know any particular timeline? What happens now moving forward?
Right. So the Department of Justice, as this press conference was kicking off, asked for Abrego Garcia to be held in prison while these pretrial proceedings play out. Obviously, that would be a big step. They claim every move he's ever made in his adult life is about crime and harming communities. There has not been an initial court appearance that we've been made aware of yet. There was no mention of that in the press conference. That would be the first step. Then we'd likely see potentially additional charges filed, or there would have to be an arraignment in which he could plead guilty or not guilty. And now, the big question also is this legal case right up the road in Maryland. What happens to that? Does the judge see it as moot now that he's been returned and charged with something else? Technically, that does fulfill her order, but she has been very critical of the Trump administration about how they've handled this case, and I don't think making those allegations here, in addition to the real charges they have against him, are going to help that case.
Sure. And Jake, we should mention that Abrego Garcia's wife has been very vocal in all of this to get her husband back home to the family. Have we heard anything from her? Do we know if she may emerge at a news conference or talk? And I think actually we might be looking at some video right here, or maybe this is past video in the past where she has addressed the news media talking about how she wants her husband home.
Yeah, and she's really stood by his side while other allegations that we've reported on at CBS that there have been domestic violence accusations against him by her. Those charges were never brought, but there were allegations in a state court in Maryland for a temporary protective order to keep her husband, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, away from her. We'll see what her and her attorney say, if anything, in the next coming days. We have not heard something yet, but certainly, really, the pressure cooker has built and built and built to this point. We were waiting to see what the Trump administration would do, if anything, and now we've finally seen what they've decided to do, which is charge him with 2 counts of smuggling people throughout the United States, specifically undocumented immigrants. that the Trump administration alleges are gang members.
Well, Jake Rosen, you were inside that news conference. Thank you so much for rushing out to talk with us and bring us the latest developments. Appreciate all of your insight as well, and we'll catch up with you a little bit later.